And we're back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're going to be joining us from this is the Driveline Academy podcast. I am your host, as per usual, Devin Morgan, Director of Youth Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy, joined by my partner, Driveline Academy Assistant Director Jeremy Tectiel, and a new special guest. Back-to-back guest appearances here. What the heck did we call your job title?
Am I the only one who knows?
I think you're the only one that knows.
Something skill intern.
Two of the three words are correct, but if we're doing like Wordle style, skill is in yellow.
Oh, okay. Skill development intern.
Skill development.
Let's go. Driveline Academy Skill Development Intern Dylan Hawley. And as I did last week, I'm going to take an opportunity to gas you up real quick. Hawley's been with us since we started, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And started, with a lot of our year one assistant coaches are working on the floor. And very similar to brands, man. I think just the difference in investment and care that you have shown from the jump. It just comes off the page, man. It's just like it's so incredibly easy to see. So like when Jeremy and I were talking, like, well, Hawley's done playing, we got to hire that guy. Like,
I appreciate it.
We just have to hire that guy, man. And like I think it gives us so much leverage to be able to have someone like you here with us, and specific to kind of what we're going to talk about today, in terms of like running the online training side of things, having someone that is invested, where the care factor is so high, but also the understanding of what we're doing from a system standpoint, from the way that it plays out to the athlete, because you've done both, is just huge.
And
Like,
people forget he also worked on track.
Did do some track stuff.
people forget.
Gave a demo or two.
Yes, it was my first not intern. You weren't an intern, just like my first hourly employee when I worked at track.
Yeah. So yeah, man. So you can just have the floor to kind of talk about like the path to get here and say whatever you want to say, and then we'll get into the other stuff.
Yeah.
Start at birth.
I guess started training using Driveline stuff like sophomore year of high school. Maybe freshman year, I don't really remember. And then like around my junior year, was kind of decided like I'm not going to be good enough to be where I want to be at the end of high school. So around then, made the decision to come out here for a year, and then COVID hit, and it became an even better decision.
Yeah.
So I was out here for a year looking for a job because it's way more expensive to live out here than it is in Minnesota. And I think I applied like mid-September of 2020 for a head coach position. Got it. Started with the 11U kids.
You and Kate, and then the 11 U's, dude.
Yep. I remember going down to Centralia, going to Tacos El Rey after the first day of games.
And that's like most of our current 13U black team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, decent chunk of them. Yeah.
A lot of them. And then last year was kind of around just as an assistant. I was playing. And then this year, I'm on as an intern, coaching the 15U squad, and running the academy online as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about online training.
Yeah.
Got an analogy. It's going to take a minute for this to play out.
Sure.
Shocking, I know. So I'm going to be 46 this year, which is kind of scary to say, but it's like the truth, and it's just a number, so whatever. It just means I'm not dead yet. But I'm very much like, that is middle age. Like, that's where it is, right?
Halfway to 92.
Halfway. And the funny thing is, like, when you get to be halfway to 92 is you kind of start looking at things with a different lens. So I stopped riding motorcycles.
Like a thicker lens because your eyesight's worse?
No, it's more transparent because like death is on the doorstep.
Okay, yeah, fair.
So I stopped riding motorcycles right before Cora was born. So I haven't been riding for like 16 years, and I miss it a lot. My wonderful darling wife has come up with a compromise where I'm going to get back to riding, but I'm going to ride just on the track, right? And kind of avoid street riding, because street riding is obviously where things can get tricky because people don't pay attention to you. They take left turns in front of you, etc. So because I know that I can't ride the way that I used to, because I suffered from like that inner troglodyte monkey at the back of my brain that's like, let's go fast. Mm-hmm. Because I can't kind of repeat that stuff, and I'm certainly at a different place in my life, I am going to like go and get trained, because like that's just the thing, right? So there's this guy Keith Code who runs California Superbike School, and he wrote a book called Twist of the Wrist. It's a 2-part book. So Keith is like the best motorcycle like racing instructor in the world because he systematized his approach. weird, right? And the way that he kind of breaks this stuff down in the book is kind of taking, you have to think about kind of the inputs and the problem. So the inputs are the choices that you make: gas, brake, lean angle, position on the seat, etc. The problem is the course or the road or whatever. And he kind of breaks it down and blockchains it, very similar to what we do on the throwing and hitting side, right? But in the book, he has this really cool analogy. He talks about kind of the way that you spend your attention. He's like, attention, it's like you have $10 worth of attention that you can spend. And if you spend $9.99 of your attention towards simply just going fast, like I'm just zoned out, I'm trying to get as close to a flow state as possible, but I'm just focused on that. You don't have a lot of attention you can pay towards being observant. So what he actually advocates for is actually starting when you're trying to learn how to ride fast is being in a very like observational position, which means you're not going to run as fast right out the gate, but you're making note through observation about like what you did, the result you got, and how you break that down.
I don't see how this analogy works.
Testing and retesting, baby.
And when I think about the evolution of like online training in general, and specifically like youth online training at Driveline, that absolutely maps to kind of like where it was when I joined the company, because youth online baseball development, which is what it used to be called, was an existing product. I think the issue, or perhaps the opportunity that we had to improve youth online baseball development, is that we weren't mandating things like Blast, and we weren't mandating things like any type of velocity reading device. And because of that, our ability to be observant about development, or, you know, just that whole thing, right? We weren't able to be in that mode. In bike racing, if you don't have the ability to be observant, then you're just like trying to go as fast as possible, and you don't have the answer to why you can't improve your times. In baseball development, if you don't have the ability to kind of be observant through technology and test retest, then I think a lot of times it pushes you. I think for us, of trying to deliver a product is like, well, let's talk about mechanics. Because what else can we talk about? You know, I don't have the ability to kind of even quantify where we were when we started and whatever mechanical changes where they got us to. So it's just like this constantly revolving conversation about mechanics because you don't have the ability to observe the effect.
Right.
And I bring that up to kind of like walk us into this process of talking about why we wanted to do online training differently and why we wanted to improve this product, and kind of how we've like reshaped this thing towards something that pairs very closely to what we have in person. It's just the technology is different.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was a thing. And I think when you first started with the online stuff, we were kind of in the middle where we're like, we knew that kind of having this constant mechanical conversation with kids wasn't what we wanted. We wanted to move away from that, so we tried to do like group training, but then the group training brought with it a lot of other kind of issues where if like Tommy is on one program and Timmy's on the other, then like, yeah, we're getting the thing that we want, which is we're kind of getting out of this like one-on-one, I'm just going to dome you about mechanics thing, but too much variance. Kids are on different programs, their schedules don't line up, etc., which then has landed us to where we are with Academy Online right now, which I think is a much better like best of both worlds configuration, right? Yeah. So that was just kind of like the floor that I wanted to set for like, because you drove a lot of these improvements to like the online product because you had been working it for so long. So I think just whatever you want to say about kind of the new configuration and also like the YTP, the yearly training plan side of things, I think is.
I mean, I think I guess I'll back up like a little bit. Took on the online stuff, and really the only data that was being collected was like most of the kids had a blast sensor.
Yeah.
Now, like the thing that drove me to Driveline is like, you're going to come in and they're going to tell you very honestly and very promptly, you're bad at this, you're good at this. So we're going to work on the things you're bad at and get you better at them. And this is what our target is. Yeah. It's very, very clear. And so I think that for me as an athlete, that was the appeal. Where like, I'm going to come in, they're going to tell me I'm either good or bad at certain things. Yep. And I'm going to have like a really, really clear plan on what to work on and where to be at a certain time. So like when you're only collecting visual data where like you're just seeing video, that sort of like long-term progression is either non-existent or strictly objective. or subjective rather. And
Or you're talking about like, okay, we talked about making this mechanical change X. How did that play out in the game? But
Right,
how
I'd
do you-
see it.
how do
I'd
you
see
even
the
monitor
video.
that?
Yeah.
Right, I see the video. You made the change, but like, are you better? Like, did that change
Yeah.
actually work? Right.
And it's
Right.
and it's like, man, the fidelity of that signal is really not great, you know,
No.
because of the environment.
Right, and I will say before I kind of get into like what we're doing right now with Academy Online, me telling you some mechanical cues and then you coming back in a couple weeks and seeing if they're better is a really good model for you to keep coming back to me.
Correct.
Because if you feel that you have trust in me as a coach, and then you're just gonna keep coming back. And like if you think you got better because either I gave you the right encouragement or you went and had a good tournament that weekend or something, there's a lot of players who don't think that they need to like have their progress proven to them that in order to get better, which simply isn't the case. Like if you just feel better, you're not better. Like we need to attach some objective results to make sure that we're getting each of our athletes better. Otherwise, like as coaches, you can't be sure you're doing your job.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are with Academy Online, is that it's mandated that every player has like access to a radar gun at the minimum once a week. We've got lots of guys doing velocity programs, so usually that once a week is their high intent day. And so that's kind of like a weekly check-in there. And then like the blast sensors are mandated now too. So like we know that bat speed is really, really important for getting youth kids to hit the ball harder and find more success in the field. So we're going to orient our training towards making kids swing the bat faster. Now that we have a way to monitor that and like assure that each kid is swinging with it on multiple times a week, like we got a pretty good stockpile of like data and progress that we can just like show to our players, to potential people who are thinking about the program. But I think like most importantly to our players in the program that like it's where we started, it's where we are now. And then like apply some context to those positive changes and be like, you're just going to hit balls harder because you're swinging the bat 8 miles an hour faster than you were, 5 months ago or whatever. But I think that piece of context is super important.
Yeah.
You can't just like throw some numbers, be like, look, the number's higher. You're really good now. It's like kids want to know like why the number's higher, what that means for them, what they can expect in the game. And so I think that like having that dedicated trainer that they get with Academy Online is really important to providing that.
Yeah, and like I think it's a really important part of like that reconfiguration to kind of lean into is like it's not that I think working one-on-one with a kid is inherently bad.
No.
It's just that you want to have some sort of system that allows everybody to be clued in about like the what and the why.
Right.
Like what did we change? Why did we change? Like what, why, and then how? And then how did it play out?
Yep.
And it's like, man, that ability to be observational, right? That ability to collect just very transparent information about whether you're getting better or not is the only way that you can kind of reinforce the stuff that you want to stick, I think, or it's the best way.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best way to understand that like, oh, this is the positive change. We had this focus on not having excessive elbow climb when I'm doing my pivot picks, right? That translates into all this downstream net positive effect, whether that's velocity or consistency or whatever. But you got to see all the like aspects of that picture you're trying to paint to judge the art.
Right.
Yeah,
and I guess just so people are on the same page, like with our Academy Online, each kid gets a trainer that's like their trainer. They meet once a month. They talk about goals that they're going to set, their progress that they've made on past goals, and then our trainers will talk about them about like what they're going to do to achieve those goals. So with a lot of kids, I'd say with most kids, it's like, especially newer ones, like throwing more consistently. We got a lot of kids who will do like the Friday to Sunday grind, and they'll have a tournament, and then they won't throw again until next Friday. Doesn't lend itself towards like any positive attributes that way. It's dangerous injury wise. It doesn't lend itself towards progress. And so I think like the number one thing that a lot of these kids benefit from is like, oh, now I have a plan. Now like, I'm not just like gonna throw when I feel like it because I haven't thrown in a few days. It's like I have a structured plan that's built around getting me better at X and Y. And then like I said, like every 4 weeks, they're checking back in with that trainer to either keep going with the plan because it's going well, or to pivot on the plan because it's not. We have like objective results to make that decision as to whether it's going well or not.
Yeah. Which is just, functionally, it's just such a night and day difference from the way that we've done it before, to be able to like integrate that stuff into the program, to have like a yearly training plan where we can kind of understand, kid in Arizona, kid in New York, kid in Florida, they might be on different schedules, but we have different entry points relative to where that schedule is, where it's just like, hey, this thing is very malleable for where you come to us with,
Right.
like could be that for the next 60 days, we're just talking about like vanilla arm care stuff to help you get healthy for your games and practices.
Right.
Which then once which is really like, I mean, what, an extended onboard, if anything else, like you're probably not going to be throwing significantly harder. You might, maybe, if you get a little bit
Depends on training
stronger.
history.
Yeah, like, I mean, but it's just like the thing can get modified for an entry point relative to where you come to us in terms of schedule, which is important because I think a lot of times another thing that you can kind of struggle with is like, oh, well, how do I deliver the most value to a new youth customer, right? Which probably means keeping the kid engaged and keeping the parent happy.
Yep.
Parent could be like, hey, I've started this program. Let's get to that velo stuff.
Right.
And it's like, hey, look, we're playing 3 games a week over the next 8 to 10 weeks. We're not going to do that, but it's going to set you up for that opportunity later.
Yes.
Like there's just all this other stuff about entry points being really, really personalized that I think allows us to say with confidence that like, hey, you can jump on this thing regardless of where you are or regardless of when you are in your season.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, like conversations I've had with trainers is like to continuously refer back to that yearly training plan that we built, but then to also understand that like the yearly training plan that we built was for our in-gym academies here in Washington. And like, there are portions of this yearly training plan that might look longer or shorter for some other, like we talked about the kids in Australia who, you went down there to talk track with them or whatever. And they were like talking about doing a velo phase. And you were like, you're playing 52 weeks out of the year. There's no opportunity for one. And so I think that like, it's a similar conversation we have with all of our athletes. It's like, it's March, you're in Arizona. We're not doing a velo phase. We will get you as ready for games and, as able to perform consistently in games, because that's what's the most important right now. And that's the point of the yearly training plan, I think, is like making the absolute most of every single week of the year.
Yep.
It's like, okay, is it 3 weeks before the season? All right, we're throwing bullpens. We're working on, being over the plate a lot. We're working on spinning the pitches we want, or spinning our pitches the way we want. Is it 5 weeks after our season has ended? All right, let's start throwing harder. Let's get bigger. Let's get stronger. We can make these slightly more, risky changes now because we're so far away from games.
Yeah.
And so I think, sorry to cut you off, but I think like that's the biggest thing for me with the yearly training plan is like we just get to make the most out of every single week of the year if we execute it well.
Yeah, because it's a simple conversation with where are you at in your season? Okay, here's where you're at in the YTP.
Right.
And then like not only can we tell you this is what you're going to be doing for the next 6 weeks, but like here's what's after that. Which you brought up at the beginning, which is something that we talked about on our Bashing Lessons podcast.
Yes.
Like, if you make a mechanical change and they feel better, that's an easy way to get repeat customer business.
Yep.
Then like keep coming back. It's not as easy when you're like very honest in your assessment with the kid and be like, this is what you struggle at, this is what you don't struggle at, and like we're mid-season, so I'm not going to give you any mechanical cues. I'm not going to do a velo phase, whatever. The way to get those have those people understand the value of like why I should do this long term is here's what's next. Here, you can see your whole year in front of you.
Yes.
We're just starting here as opposed to if you would sign up in September, we're maybe going to start here.
Right.
And like now we can map this out, and like especially when you get to Australia, Japan, other countries, Chat GPT can translate training into Japanese, but it can't pinpoint where you are in the YTP. Like that is something that we have to like
a trainer to do.
Right. That we have to like have that personal touch and like actually have some intentionality of like you're not everyone's gonna start day one.
No. Everyone's gonna start with an on ramp because most of these kids haven't thrown plyos before.
Correct. Yeah. But your on ramp may look different depending on who you are and what time you're at in the season and when you need to be ready to play by.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, we've got kids between 8 and I think we've got a couple, long tenured kids who are 15 too. And it's just like, not only could they be at the exact same place in the yearly training plan, but like our trainers need to have the savvy to know like, okay, this kid needs a lot more than this kid.
Yeah.
Or like, even if we have 2 10-year-old kids and one is biologically advanced and one is not, like those are going to be completely different training programs, even if they're at, they play in the same league. Right?
Yeah. And like in that system, that system, and then the system of the guy or the girl who's just like trying to say some magic words, they both revolve around the same thing. They both revolve around trust. Like I, as the parent, if I'm paying, I have to trust that like this thing is, I trust you to be the expert, right? The difference is, and this is again like a really, really substantial difference, and it's what differentiates these two perspectives, is that one of these things is just like you're trusting me to be the expert. You're trusting my eyes, you're trusting my history.
Whatever little coach bio thing I wrote that you read and was like, oh, this guy sounds qualified.
Yeah. So we meet in the lobby or whatever, and I go, hey, Johnny's really working on driving off that back leg. He's got a lot better today. Mm-hmm. And you as the parent are just like, oh, great, let's go get him.
Yep.
Right? Because the parent doesn't have that experience. They don't have that background. So I just have to trust that, like, if, Joey instructor, 2 bags is telling me that my kid's doing better at driving off the back leg, and then that's going to map to something. Mm-hmm. There's this other thing over here, though, where we're leveraging trust the same way, but we're being very transparent about the outcome.
We're showing our work.
Yeah, man. And it's a very, very different thing, and
I will say there's some trust in knowing, like, are these the numbers we should be looking at? Is this the data that
sure
matters?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that through multiple blog posts, through multiple research studies, like, we're pretty damn sure that, like, maybe it's not like the end all be all. I mean, I will be the first to tell you that bat speed works in multiple directions, and just because the number goes up doesn't mean that, like,
sure,
we are undoubtedly a better hitter. But like, fucking matters. And like, I'm pretty certain that, like, the things that we're tracking, the things that we're looking at, unequivocally make a baseball player better and matter for their success later on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's also like it's not, I guess it's not a false equivalency. That's a different thing. But like, just because we say the bat speed is really important doesn't mean that we're also suggesting like
mutual exclusivity is
like it's not to say that, like, well, you can just have bat speed and be a shitty hitter,
right?
Because like that,
I've seen it.
I've seen it. And I think a lot of times, because somebody this in the last couple few days, it's like on twitter.com, eggs velocity is I got the receipts. Let me just pull it up. I'm a big stickler for accuracy.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, it's hard to be a good hitter without bat speed.
Yes.
You
can have bat speed and not be a good hitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exit velocity is the most overrated measurement in baseball. And like, I understand where you're going. And it was very, like, I wanted to, like, and I'm, I guess sometimes I'm kind of a pot stirrer, but in this particular weekend, I didn't feel like stirring the pot. But I wanted to, like, be like, hey, like, bat speed is the most underrated measurement. Because exactly what you said, you can be an okay hitter relative to your level, relative to your competition, relative to your age, without bat speed. But if you want to open that door to high performance, it's just necessary. Like, this is just like, you can't make bread without flour. We're not going to get there, man. And of course that gets twisted around and like, oh, well, you're encouraging kids to overswing, whatever that means. And it's like, well, no, what we're talking about is rising tide raises all ships.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like, and the amusing thing is it like, so somebody put that quote out, bunch of back and forth, obviously, because nothing's going to trigger both old school and new school coaches been like saying something like very bombastic that way. And I say that as someone who's like, I've done that thing. And the last reply that I saw is the guy that had the original post is going like, well, blah, 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 blah. High school teams don't have TrackMan, yada, yada. So
what if they could afford it?
Sure. Well, of course they would. So he finishes with, we'll just hit the ball hard.
I mean, he's right, like, but how would one measure whether or not you're hitting the ball hard?
Let me introduce you to my iSoto, my friend. And it's not
A lot of those guys would say years, by the way. Not
Sure.
hours. Yeah, it's like I heard it. It sounded
Sure.
good.
Sure. I mean, and I've also like heard, ball make contact with like certain BB core bats, and it sounds great, and it's just like it's a worm burner. It's a soft
we use
flare.
the loose cover potatoes that we do in here, and it
Oh.
sounds like a broken bat.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like a brand new metal bat. Like
Yeah.
That's why I have such a problem with the movie Trouble with the Curve.
I've heard I've heard by so many people have told me that it's bad that I've just ignored it. Is it that? I mean,
I don't know. I've never seen it, but I know that the whole point of it is the guy's losing his eyesight and is able to scout by his ears, which is just ludicrous.
Hold on.
sounds like a real dog.
like Clint Eastwood. I'm pretty sure the whole point of the movie is he's like going blind, and he's like a baseball scout and is using his ears to scout, and like brings his daughter, who's Amy Adams, with him, and like I don't know what exactly she does, but like he's able to still scout and know the good baseball players using his ears and not his eyes. Which,
I want like a much more current version where he's just like very data oriented.
Yeah.
And like
where he's
All he can
blind
read are-
and deaf. And just like
Actually,
is able to
I
read
just
like
watched the Sunny episode.
the braille of the data, and it's like, it's pretty good.
it reminds me of the Sunny episode I just watched where they Charlie writes the fifth sense. They talk about the guy who can smell crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was the premise of that movie.
Yeah. I'm
So
pretty
it's
sure.
like-
Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but because I've never actually had the guts to watch that movie.
So it's like
Because I watched Draft Day and was like, I'm done with these.
Yeah.
I'm done with any kind of movie that
so it's like
has that in it.
it's like the baseball version of like Daniel Day-Lewis and My Left Foot.
What a wild analogy.
I mean,
No, Clint Eastwood didn't win an Oscar.
well,
So-
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh man.
And I don't think he plays like a blind person, just someone who
He's
is
just
going blind.
Oh gosh. Wow. You learn something new every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to be coached by an expert, a subject matter expert who you can trust in the field who isn't going blind or deaf, Driveline Academy online is like a decent option. Man, that's tough.
I think something I want to point out with like the difference between because we run monthly meetings with our players, and I think that it's important to note the difference between that and doing like a lesson every month with a person. Our athletes also are all able to like text our trainers in between those meetings, which is really, really valuable because it's like, okay, we can talk about a potential mechanical change we want to make on that meeting, right? Maybe you gave a good example of like elbow climb through pivot picks, whatever it may be. I think that constant communication provides lots of value and actually mimics the Gen Pop floor here at Driveline pretty well. Because like, okay, we meet on the 1st, we talk about this change we want to make, and then on the 7th and the 15th, you send me videos about you doing this drill. Hey, what do you got on this? I did the set today and it felt really good. Here's the video. And then like we can kind of have like a little bit, more of a running communication before that next meeting on the 30th. So that when you get to that meeting on the 30th, we can spend that 30 minutes or whatever, like really, really valuably. And those 30 minutes are all valuable instead of like the first 5 being like, oh, this past month was really good.
Yeah.
The running loop of communication, I think gets really, really close to that constant feedback loop we're trying to provide here on the floor, which I think is like the name of the game for us with Academy. Is like once we put the numbers and the things that matter in front of kids, yes, they will need coaching to like go achieve it, and we'll need some like outside of the box ideas and cues given to them to like go and make that progress. But also like there's a lot of work that a kid can get done with being like, I take a swing, that number is too low, let me try something else and make it higher.
Yeah.
And just to explain for any of our lovely viewers who might have been like, did he just say Gen Pop? That is what we refer to our Driveline regular training if they're not an academy kid and not a big leaguer. They're in that middle ground, which is our general population, and we do refer to them as Gen Pop. But like that was one of the big things when we talked about originally like revamping online training was we have online training, remote training for big leaguers, for minor league players that runs really, really well.
Which is data oriented.
Yeah. We already have that in place.
Right.
We already have our academy in place with a YTP that is pretty strong, that we're pretty confident in, and we're doing some pretty cool things with it. Now, how do we get the academy online to be closer to both of those things?
Yeah.
And that was a lot of the impetus behind these moves and the constant communication with the trainer, things like that.
Right. And like there's a lot of variance, athlete to athlete, on what their experience looks like.
Yeah.
And it's all good variance.
Right.
Like it's all variance catered towards them. But like, we had a kid sign up in Japan recently, and then we've got kids down in Arkansas. We've got a couple kids here in Seattle who are like, welcome to come in for lessons because like they're close to the facility here. And so like all of their experiences with the program are going to look different, but all of their experiences are going to be tied towards like getting objective goals, having training that makes sense as to why we're doing it relative to those goals. And then like they'll get a trainer who is dedicated to, making sure that those goals get achieved.
I mean,
it's like the way that Academy works here. I mean, all of our players here at Academy are setting goals and working towards them every training phase. So for us to not do that with the online stuff would be a disgrace.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that whole loop of like the the monthly part of things also maps to just like the amount of reps and the time that you need for something to stick.
Especially with a kid who's growing and changing.
Especially with a biologically immature 9 to 13-year-old boy or girl. Like it needs time for that stuff to like sink in.
Right.
And
most kids 8 to 14, they're experiencing like some of the most rapid growth of their life from most people that age.
Yeah.
And so like it presents a pretty difficult task for our trainers because like you could make a change, feel like you're in a good spot, and then like a couple weeks go by, the kid grows 3 inches and loses 15 pounds because kids do that, and now you got to start from ground zero, it feels like. And I think that just like forces our trainers to be like really, really solid in what they know, and like keep directing kids back to those things.
I think that is I think that's a feature, not a bug of the ecosystem.
Right.
Because if you are working with someone that you trust, whether in person or online, as a parent, when your kid comes to you, and I say this with experience, where they're like, I feel like I just can't find a barrel today. I felt like I just couldn't throw hard today. There's typically like 2 paths. And like, one of those paths is to try to like blame it on, you want to find a boogeyman, like you want to find, I want to give my kid an answer, right? I want to tell them that there's an easy solution to that problem. And that line of thinking, a lot of times I think is very easy to push you into, well, what's the mechanical reason that stuff happened?
What were you doing with your hips?
Yeah. Oh, you got over your front side too much, or not enough, or your shoulder was flying open, or it was flying closed, or your head, and
those things could be true.
Right, and all that stuff could be true, but it also could be that your child is an incredibly unique, one-time only configuration of their biology, the base state that you cannot negotiate around. And I've had these conversations with my own kids where it's like, okay, well, what else is going on? You're sleeping like 11 hours a night. You'll sleep 12 hours if I don't wake you up on the weekend. You're crushing food constantly. You eat more than I do. You ran into a shelf the other day. You ran into the side of the door.
Kids are terrible at applying context. I think working with kids for 3 years, that's something I've come to realize, is that like kids are really, really bad about like considering anything that's not right in front of them.
Right.
And like, so to have someone there who can be like, yeah, you might have sucked today, but like, think about what you did yesterday, what you did this morning, what you ate, how you slept, what we've done for training, all of those things, kids are just not going to consider.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation with a kid on my team. We'd just gone through our competition prep phase on the hitting side. And his bat speed was down like throughout like the last 4 weeks, and he's like, it's been down like every single day. Like, I don't know what's up. Like it's no good.
Yeah.
And I was like, we just got done with data collection week, where you have a 45-mile-an-hour pitch coming in that is not challenging to hit at all. Now you don't know if you're going to get a fastball, slider, or changeup coming out of that machine, and it's all going to be like 75 plus, right? That's a way different environment for a kid. But they are just sitting there and like, oh, my number's low, I suck. And it's like, no, this is like completely in line with what we see all the time. It's, as expected. I would have been surprised if it didn't. But like kids just don't realize that. They don't know those sorts of things. So to have somebody there who can kind of like guide them towards that context is really, really important.
And show the work.
Right. And the combination of those two things is why it's like so valuable to have access to text that trainer whenever they want. Yeah, sure, they have like the monthly meetings where they can hop on Zoom for a while and actually have a conversation, but like they can just if something weird happens in a game or a practice or like they're unhappy, they can just text the trainer and knock that out.
Right.
Basically right away because the trainer will have an answer for them. And it's you don't get that from like the guy that's giving you lessons. That like you'll only see when he's giving you a lesson.
Right.
Probably not going to sit there unless he charges you way more for it and like answer your questions on non-lesson days.
Yeah, and like maybe you have this amazing lessons coach who's like, I want you to text me after games and like let me know how they go. The best thing he could give you is like try and do this with. I mean, the best thing I would see that person giving you is like try and do this with your certain part of your body while you swing.
Sure.
And like maybe that's valuable, maybe that's effective for that kid. But I think that like it's not very actionable. Where like a kid can't be like, did I do that? Yes, I did.
Right.
But if you give a kid, let's say a kid is out in front of everything, he's pulling everything to the third base side, he's a righty hitter or whatever. You just tell that kid, like, I want you to try and burn the right fielder, like hit a ball over the right fielder's head. We have a swing flaw. Let's try and overcorrect here. The kid can, maybe he like still fouls everything off to the left side and like still strikes out every at bat, but he can ask himself, like, did I try as hard as I could to burn the right fielder on every at bat?
Yeah.
And like the kid can say, yes, I did. But he can't say, was my hip in the right position on every single swing? He can't know that.
Yeah.
Not real time. I kind of argue that you could know that even if you had video, but that's beside the point. Like the goal needs to be giving kids that something that they can very easily drive to and a very easily set goal where like the kid knows exactly what they're trying to do, whether or not they actually accomplish it.
Yeah. And the cleanliness of communication there too is so different, right? Because the moment that you start talking to me about my back hip and what you want it to do, when you're talking about kids,
there's bias immediately.
You're immediately in this ecosystem where like the words that I'm saying, what's the fidelity level that gets like actually received?
We're playing telephone with two people.
Yes.
Right. What's the alternative? The alternative is like what you said is to push them in a direction where they have more clarity, and then you leverage whatever contextual tools you have on the side that can let us know the effect. Like that, it's such a night and day difference. And I think we talk about this stuff and we just throw this stuff out there like it's just like, well, that's just what you do. And the reality is that like the majority of the ecosystem that parents and kids in youth baseball exist in is so fundamentally night and day different than what we talk about. It's it's so different. But that doesn't mean that our thing is worse because it's different. It's like we are intentionally landing on this side of the equation because we don't want to be over there.
Right.
I don't want to engage a kid in that conversation about some sort of like internal configuration in their bodies and then have to rely on the fidelity of that, starting with like, does that kid even understand what I'm talking about? Oh, I need to see you loading that scap more in your swing. Good luck.
You're lucky if a kid knows what a scap is.
Right. Like good luck trying to make them understand that with any degree of confidence.
I mean, some of the lessons we've given, kids have like not necessarily understood what it means to hit a ball square.
Yeah.
And like you talk about scap protection, like you're just 10 miles over their head.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and if you can't agree on that type of stuff, batted ball outcome stuff, oppo pull middle, do we even know what these things mean?
Yeah.
If you can't get that stuff to be received by both parties and not playing a two-person version of telephone, then good luck trying to do the other stuff.
Right. I think the funnest thing about coaching is to like, you make the decision, this kid needs to make change X, right? And then the process of how can I say like one sentence and have the change made, right? Mm-hmm. With most kids, they're not biologically advanced enough. They do not have the proprioception to be like, I need your body to do this. And they'll be like, got you. And then like, by the end of the week, by the end of the round, like it's looking better, right? But you give them a goal, like to do X, to hit a ball, that's not pulled between 10 and 15 degrees or something, that you've decided will help drive this change you're trying to make. at least in my experience, I don't have the numbers to back it up, way more effective, not only like session, like in session, but also like lasting progress. Kid gets away from that change. They can really easily go and tell themselves, oh, this is what gets me back, right?
Yeah.
If I think about hitting a ball here like that, that's what gets me back. Instead of the 13-year-old who's, you know, has some good rounds, right? They have a good couple months and they go back to that swing flaw. They've grown 5 inches.
Yeah.
Thinking about an internal cue that they think gets them back, it's just like not going to be effective because the internal feeling or whatever is going to be completely different because their body is different. So like having that external goal of driving that actual mechanical change seems to be way more effective.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's a tricky thing to execute online. Like also, you know, trying to do that remotely is, I make no bones about it, man. It requires you to burn some calories. So like I think having, you know, you, Logan, Tyler, Cade, who else am I forgetting that's on our squad? Yeah, like
Couple on deck.
yeah, like the squad of folks that we have working with Academy Online who, again, have been there as athletes and understand the system on the back end. That leverage is like that's the reason that the trust gets established. Is somebody has a very clear idea of like what we're trying to do in the system that's going to do it, but also they've gone through that system as an athlete.
Right. They can sit there and ask themselves like, okay, I see this kid has this issue. What constraints can I apply to like force their way out of this issue? Kid always gets around the ball, throws everything like a football. Okay, you got to throw your plyos like super arm side or something, right? And so I'm just going to like make you stand to the left of your plyo wall so you physically can't hit the plyo wall on the left of you. You know, like those sorts of considerations about like what constraints we're going to apply to like really drive changes quickly.
And I think the funny thing about that is that like I think a lot of people would, because the lesson model is so pervasive, you would assume that the outcome of that is like someone who's going to throw 20 things at you, or I can see 30 things that you're doing wrong or whatever, right? Where it's like this is very much Dunning-Kruger, right? I get to the top of this mountain and it's like I'm trying to be as efficient as possible with the way that I'm coaching you to give you the simplest goal to try to achieve that's going to have this systemic effect on everything that like precedes it.
Right.
You know, that thing, that like efficiency of communication, I think a lot of parents miss in the youth side that like, well, he tells me I got like 7 things wrong.
Right.
It's like, no, it's more efficient to identify the one thing that's going to create systemic change and then let that thing sink in. Right. And then you just work bottom up about everything else.
Yeah. I mean, like if as a coach, your goal is like to just get a player better. I think that like people know enough now and there's enough out there where like that's just not a good enough goal anymore. Yeah. Like to just get people better. Like you have to be like streamlined and efficient in doing so and like really make the most of every minute you get with every athlete because they'll probably get better wherever they go. Like just doing more hitting and more throwing, like kids are kids, they'll get better and stronger. But like at this point, people know enough where like you gotta be fucking efficient. You got to like not waste any time, not waste a day. And I think that like we're getting pretty close to that with the Gym and the online academy.
Yeah.
Just like making the absolute most of our time and like getting really, really good at our jobs.
Yeah.
And because of that, this isn't really a product for a large portion of the market who isn't willing to like do it every day.
No,
look at their schedule, look at track every day,
right.
Go and do the workout that's in there, self-supervised or supervised by a parent or a sibling or someone like that, and get after it every single day. There's a lot less people out there that are like that than think they're like that.
And like we're not want to clear the air. We're not making 8-year-olds throw 7 days a week. But the idea of like being dedicated to like 3-4 days, right? Exactly. Yeah. A program, a consistent program that's going to like compound and build on itself so that, we're consistently making progress on both like the workload building side, which is really important for kids as they get better. They're going to be asked to throw more and more. We need them to be ready for that. But also just like on the actual skill improvement side.
Yeah. Yeah. Consistency kills. And I think it's a lot, man, it's easy to like think that there's a boogeyman that you can just kill in the night and you're going to resolve that problem in perpetuity. But it's like, can you do 3 sessions a week for 52 weeks? Can you do that for another 52 weeks?
Yeah.
Like, and continue to work.
Do you like baseball that much? That's the question.
Yeah.
And so like it becomes part of our job to provide that and to like, kid, obviously if they come to us, they like baseball enough, right? So like stimulating that, providing that, fostering that growth is part of our jobs as well.
Well, and especially because, again, you're talking about kids who are crappy at context.
Yeah.
And you're talking about parents who might not be much better about it either.
Right.
But and again, kind of like the thing that we try to do is try to build that context in an engagement thing. Like, what was the kid that came and tried out today or last week? He said he was like, I was so happy to play baseball and not have.
Yeah, how devastating was that? He's was asked on the car ride home if he enjoyed coming to Driveline to like try out some of the practices, and he said it's so nice to play baseball when someone's not screaming at you. It's like that's a real dagger to the heart there.
Yeah, like from the mouth of babes, right? Yeah. Like that's just the kid doesn't have any.
The takeaway is we should scream more.
Oh, sure. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. Also, the kid was 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think tells you everything you need to know about just, the landscape, right? Like you've just got a bunch of coaches and parents who coach who have a disproportionate sense of consequence. They have a disproportionate or ill-formed relationship to the outcome on the field, either for their team or for their child, and how that informs their own sense of self. Mm-hmm. And it all just goes sideways from there very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly. There's just like a bunch of like downstream stuff. So it's like, and the funny thing is, actually, Dylan, I forgot I was going to gas you up about something different. So let me pull it up.
Double gas up.
It's probably not your time and insight.
So like,
I got it.
So Dylan, I think we kind of skipped over this, but you're also coaching our 15U and 15U and 16U kind of right now. Like you're kind of working with both. And drivelinebaseball.com/careers.
Yeah.
If you want to coach 15U, we need
16U.
We need a coach.
Join me.
425-523-4030, support at drivelinebaseball.com.
Should I give out my personal number on this?
Ooh, dicey. Hi.
Instead of calling and maybe talking to like
me,
Brent, or I guess I guess you. You could just call 425-227-9076.
This is so bold. I love it. It's about that action. So we're just having this conversation about context, and we're talking about how we kind of talk to athletes. And so we use Slack as kind of the way that we communicate with all of our parents. And then for our high school, or I guess 14 and up players and parents, mm-hmm. right?
13s too.
13s too.
If you got a phone, hop in Slack.
Yeah. And Dylan, the message that you wrote, the weekly to the kids this week, man, it is exactly for me like how I want this thing to function and how I want our coaches to be able to communicate context, because we're the data-driven guys, right? Like we've spent however long we've been talking, 40 some odd minutes about observation, right? About using data to kind of quantify improvement, and that's how stuff goes, right?
But you read it live?
But the context that Dylan provided in our team channel was just like, it's everything, right? So there's a bunch of stuff kind of to the parents and players for all the work they put in. The thing that I want to get to specifically is like talking to these kids, 15-year-old kids and 16-year-old kids about their high school seasons. And here's what Dylan writes.
A lot of freshmen.
Yeah, a lot of freshmen. So it's their first time in high school baseball, different animal. Mm-hmm. And here's what Dylan writes. Now it's go time. It's not time to worry about our attack angle, swing to swing, or the spit efficiency of our fastball. Are these things we want to continue to monitor if possible? Yes. But the driving focus for all of you who make a high school team needs to be winning on the field at a personal level for the team's benefit. We've spent the offseason bolstering your toolkit. Now it's time to take the tools you have and go to work. Like, that is the context that I wish every coach could be able to grapple with. You'd be able to see it from both sides, right? We can work in a configuration where we are expressly pointed towards individual improvement. We are going to take notice of things like bat speed, spin efficiency, yada, yada. That's the phase that we're in. But that phase exists in a very specific window of time. And then you have the other phase where it's like, hey, you got to go out and compete.
Right.
And the thing that I want to see in youth baseball in the next decade, because I don't think it's going to take some time, is more people that kind of understand both sides of things, right? Just because we have this attachment to individual development and communicating context and quantifying performance doesn't mean that we ignore that other reality of the game. Like that, it's all there. The whole reason we do all this crap is to actually go out and be successful. When I just put on a uni and a belt,
It's the only reason.
That's the reason. But I think sometimes, people pervert the message a little bit when we talk about stuff, and maybe this is our fault because we under-index for how much we talk about it, but like that's the point.
Right.
That's the point.
That's why we don't call strength.
Right.
Call it high performance so we can go perform on the field.
Right. This is the back paragraph of what Dylan wrote. We're looking to hit lasers, be aggressive on the base paths, take good ABs. We're going to fill up the zone, embarrass hitters, dominate in tough situations. Be the guy on the team who can go 0 for 3 and rip a double in the fourth AB. Be the guy who has a shaky first inning but dices the rest of the game. Be the guy who uses failure as a motivator, a learning tool, not a reason to pout. Be a dog. Keep your focus on the next pitch, the next AB, always learning from the last one. That context is so important for these kids because they're not going to have it on their own. Even high school kids.
I didn't.
And,
Right.
and in most situations, that's not the context their high school coach is going to give them.
Correct. So,
I mean, I know as a high schooler, if I was 0 for 3, there was absolutely no shot there was getting a fourth. We were getting a hit in the fourth at bat.
yeah.
No shot. And so I think that, like, because for me it was like I just struck out. It's because I wasn't moving my hips right. It's because, so I'm sitting in the dugout thinking about how I have to swing differently and not thinking about how I have to go compete and thinking about that, like, there's a ball coming in, I have to hit it. And at that point in time, that's as complicated as I can make that thought.
Yeah.
And that was not something I was good at in high school at all. And so I think that, like, helping other kids be good at it is something that's important, because you look at some of the best baseball players in the world and their mind is extremely quiet when they're doing the thing. But that means we have to be really, really focused in here when we're training for the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that context is, it's worth its weight in gold, because like.
But that's not to say data can't be in that context.
Sure, of course.
We've grounded out 8 times over our last 2 games. What's our attack angle been? Oh, it's been negative every single swing. Let's go take a round of BP. Let's try and hit some moonshots and overcorrect and start to feel what the opposite feels like so we can go in the middle.
Yeah.
Sometimes, during the season, the context is data, but we have to open our eyes that, like, sometimes it's not. And we have to, like, take a very, almost like a non-baseball approach to, like, triaging some things. Because, like, sometimes it is absolutely just, like, the person and the athlete that's inhibiting success, or not the athlete, the person, the mental side of things. And I think, like, as a good coach, you're able to look at all the data and look at all that stuff and then realize it's not this. Yeah. It's something else, you know? And so I think that, like, hopefully that's what all of our Academy Online trainers, all of our coaches here are capable and adept to doing.
Yeah. I think it's just the number one tool to be able to have in the toolbox, to be able to kind of live on both sides, which is an easy thing to say. It's a harder thing to exemplify. You gotta be invested. The care factor has to be high. The Carol Dweck growth mindset, 1 to 10 scale has got to be up there. Like, you have to be committed to, like, really grappling with this shit and understand all the things you need to know to serve the whole of the athlete. Right. I'm not just understanding everything I can about bat speed and attack angle and remaining intentionally ignorant about everything on the edge. You gotta see the whole thing. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna do this is gonna be a recurring segment for new guests on the pod. Jeremy and I have already gone through this process. So the game is. We're doing
this one. Okay.
3 ball players.
Okay.
Who, if they insulted you, it would hurt the most. So mine, if I remember correctly, Gary Carter, Kirk Gibson, and I think I picked, like, Spike Owen as, like, a random Mariner from my childhood.
Okay.
So
I don't even remember who I picked. Could not tell you.
Ooh,
I feel like Derek Lee was probably one of them.
Kid's gotta be
yeah,
one of
Derek
them.
Lee was one. Was it Carlos Zambrano?
No, he should probably judge me. That guy's a psycho. So.
Well,
That guy was honestly, I learned some very important lessons of how to not act on a baseball field from that guy. Loved him. Loved watching him play.
he stinks.
But like I was like 11. It was like, this guy's overreacting.
Yeah.
Like this guy should calm down. Like,
So that's the game.
Ken Griffey Jr.
oh, Ken Griffey Jr. was
He's
on
got to
there.
be one.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Oh, who was maybe I don't remember Mark Pryor maybe. Yes, but then I
because-
said he works. I know he doesn't.
Yeah, he's
he's good with me.
Yeah.
We're good. So
Yeah. So that's the game. 3 big leaguers who like it would just
It would just kill. It would just sting.
if they
So-
post it online, like this Driveline Academy product,
yeah.
Academy Online product is terrible, and whoever runs it must have no brain.
Yeah.
Who would you like see that you'd be funny, and then like who's on there that you'd be like, wow, that is like devastating.
And it's got a sting.
Right.
So to differentiate, when Jack McDowell called me a fat fuck online,
It was funny.
It's fine.
Right.
I could not care less. Jack, I hope you have a great day.
All right, here's the name I think he's going to say.
I see where you're going. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Denard Span.
Denard Span.
Not who I thought it was.
Childhood favorite right there.
Okay.
We had
Okay.
like 3 Denard Span jerseys growing up.
Okay.
Uh,
I went who I thought was your childhood favorite.
the pre Denard Span center fielder
Well,
for the
no,
Twins. Is
he'd
that what
be.
you were guessing? Carlos Gomez.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about him. I don't know if I,
That is exactly what I typed out.
I liked him a lot as a kid. I don't know if I have enough like not that I've ever met either of them, but like Denard Span seems like a better dude than Carlos Gomez, I might say. I could be
You might not be wrong.
I could
You
be
might not
totally
be
wrong.
wrong.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
met either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's my reason.
You're going off of available information. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right, so we got Denard Span. That's one.
Denard Span. Scherzer.
Okay.
That's a pretty good one.
Good one.
Watch
Yeah.
all the Scherzer Day starts.
Yeah.
Shit. This is a good question.
I know it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. Mine was very easy to just go like Gary Carter and Kirk Gibson because like that's just it. You know, like I was a Gibby guy before he got to the Dodgers, and then once that cemented in '88, I'm locked. And Gary Carter was like my idol.
Oh, I said Kerry Wood. That's who I replaced
Oh
Mark
yeah,
Pryor
yeah,
with.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
Kerry
yeah,
Wood.
yeah, yeah.
That's
That's
who I
right.
replaced Mark Pryor with.
Might go like Joe Nathan.
Ooh, yeah.
You said Joe, and I was like almost about to type out Joe Mauer because I thought that was going to be your third one. But
Not
Joe
a big
Nathan.
Mauer fan.
Not a big Mauer fan.
Boring. Yeah. I just found Mauer.
Joe
a little
Nathan. I
boring.
think Joe Nathan won me a fantasy baseball championship.
Mauer was so Minnesotan though.
I know.
I mean, that's like
The most Minnesotan ball player of all
yeah,
time.
yeah.
I mean, born and raised, but
That's the
Yeah.
first time I've ever heard like a born and raised Minnesotan say anything that's like even could be construed as slightly negative about Joe Mauer.
I won't.
And
say
you
anything
did it on a
totally-
public podcast.
I know.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just a little. I mean, to hit one walk-off home run your entire time, one walk-off hit.
Was he even trying?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But you know who he hit it to? You know who caught that ball? Max
No.
Garrett.
That is absolute gas.
Max had gotten called from the Saints, who are still
Yeah.
in the American
Yeah.
Association, and when they were like, "Hey,
He was a bullpen catcher.
our
for them,
bullpen
right?
catcher's out
Yeah.
or something," so I think he was only there in that series. Joe Mauer hits his only walk-off hit into the bullpen for a walk-off home run. Max Garrett catches.
That's incredible.
Everything comes back
What
to
an incredible
Gary.
story.
Yeah,
Everything comes back to Gary, dude.
It should.
it's all
Yeah.
Gary.
Yeah.
It
It's all Gary.
has been.
All Gary all the time.
It's that meme when they used to
Yeah, yeah.
It was scary the whole time.
Oh, that's so good. So yeah, I think this is a good recurring segment.
Yeah,
for
I
us
like
to-
that for
yeah.
our guests.
Yeah.
I like that. I like
Yeah, we're. I think we'll
Stay tuned for more recurring segments that,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we're cooking up over here.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't expect that you guys are always going to tune in to listen to me yell about how dumb aspects of youth baseball are. So I think bringing some of this stuff in is good.
Yeah.
We'll get some segments going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, man. I don't know what we're going to talk about next pod.
I don't know.
know.
We haven't cooked it up yet because we had the back-to-back guests. So we
Yeah.
haven't-
So
Players that you want to insult.
Oh man,
I'm coming for you, John Rocker.
yeah, John. That's a tough one. AJ
That's a
Pollock,
I thought you were going to
AJ
say the
Pollock.
other AJ, who absolutely I would insult.
Brzezinski.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like if we're going former players, like John Smoltz. I hate you. stop broadcasting TV games. It seems like you hate the job. And you are rich enough that you don't have to do things you hate. So stop, because you're ruining it for everybody else.
Does it seem like he derives any joy
No,
from what he does?
No, it seems like someone is forcing him to go, and he's just like miserable the whole time. It feels like
You should call a spring training game for the next pod.
Dude, live.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
I'll call her.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it. It seems like his vibe is like me in the waiting room at the dentist.
If you're gonna talk shit, you have to do it better. You got to call a game now.
Yeah. Oh, I could do it better than John Smoltz. But somebody else would have to do play-by-play because he's the color.
Right.
Who's gonna do?
But like,
play-by-play?
I could say the exact same thing as John Smoltz. I could literally like get the transcript of a broadcast and just read
And just
everything
more excited
and
about it.
just be more excited.
So you
even
know
though
how they-
all of his shit's wrong anyways, I could
know-
say the wrong thing and just have some sort of excitement and enthusiasm, and it would just like magically make it a better experience for everybody.
People would want to watch.
You know they did the.
I think so.
You know they did the analytical broadcasts. Like
Yeah, they were great.
proposal. They should do one that is like squarely boomer oriented. So I want Smoltz up at like 11.
Proposal
Like,
is that should be the alternate broadcast.
yes.
Give us the good one.
Yes.
So I don't have to go to like ESPN Plus or whatever to see the Petrello one.
I want like Smoltz and Marvin Freeman and like Don Mattingly in the booth, and I want them just crapping on the game for like
11 too.
for 3 hours. And here's the deal: it has to be a game with none of the new rules. No new pitch clock.
No, I think it has to be a game with all the new rules so that they have something to complain about.
Fucking do it at the Field of Dreams site or whatever.
Although, with the new rules, they just don't have time. They'll be halfway through a complaint and the inning will be over. Yeah,
That's right.
and be like, damn it. Like, I actually... Like,
enough time to complain.
yeah, like, oh, man.
Was it Wandy Peralta that just like quick pitched somebody 3 straight like that?
There were so many videos this past week of like, here is a guy getting like a 3-pitch strikeout in the same time it took that same guy to throw 1 pitch 2 years ago.
That guy
Or like the Pedro Baez.
Petey, dude.
It took him so long to throw that 1 pitch to David Ross, and they were like multiple
It is
at
feeling
bats,
a
like
little bit
full
like
at bats.
arcade baseball.
Yeah, and like I don't mind it. I don't.
I mind parts of it.
I don't
I
terribly
mind parts of it.
I don't terribly mind it.
I think I'm fine with the game taking whatever it takes. Like
It's-
time wise,
It
you know.
depends.
Yeah, but Rob-
There's like certain scenarios where
Rob
like
is not.
Pedro Baez, I'm good to get that out of the game.
That was brutal. Yeah, 100%. I watched that game live. It was agonizing.
It was absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
And like there's we could absolutely eliminate the extremes and not have to go based on like this 15-20 second pitch clock.
Yeah.
But I'd rather, if we have to pick one or the other, I'd rather go the 15-20 second pitch clock than like the Pedro Baez. Pitchers can go like 38 seconds in between throwing a pitch, and we're just all sitting there just waiting.
You've heard the story about why Pedro was going so slow that day, right?
No, I don't think so.
There was like a coach who was telling him to like slow down,
He already was slow.
and he already. I
He
think
was
they were.
already one of like the slowest paced players.
Yeah,
or
I think
pitchers.
they were. If I there's I think JP Hoonster, one of the guys that does like stuff for the Dodgers, wrote about it. But it was like somebody, a coach, and was this before the prior regime? I can't remember in Dodger history, but whatever. No, it 100% was. So it was like, hey, you need to like slow something down, and I think that's what it turned into. Was him just going like, yeah, I'm just going to deliver 1 pitch about every minute or so.
Yeah, that is brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am down to do a spring training game where we just make it more enjoyable. You can't forget it has to be an Astros game if we have like the Boomer podcast so that they can have Jeff Bagwell on and he can talk about the Astros and how he's taken every ounce of progress that they've made over the last handful of years, no matter how you feel about them, and just reversed all of it.
Mariners fans should be very happy about
Mariners
that
fans should be
development.
thrilled.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, that's good times. So next episode, maybe we'll call a spring training game. Maybe we'll find something else to talk to that doesn't get us sued by MLB. Although you can do like those watch things with like UFC and you just sync it up, right? Like that's we can do it.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. We'll do it on like YouTube Live.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
We could, you know what? I could announce like an out of the park baseball simulated game and still be more enthusiastic about it than John Smoltz is about like a World Series game, a playoff game, whatever it is.
Yeah, imagine the unlock it is for the audience when the people that are commentating and driving the conversation about the action don't hate baseball.
Yeah.
Imagine what that sounds like.
Like, it's not the best to listen to Tony Romo broadcast a game because a lot of it is just like noises and excitable noises.
Sure.
But like I would rather have someone in the booth who's like giggling at like a guy throwing 102 or like, look at that bat speed. Like I'd rather have that than like John Smoltz complaining that
He's overthrowing.
People are throwing too hard or whatever he complains about.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on, Kevin Calabro and Marcus Johnson calling Sonics games, and they were the best because they were as hyped as I was when anything good happened, and they wore it when something bad happened. But they were very insightful about what was taking place in the middle.
Sounds like a good coach.
I mean, I grew up listening to Cubs games with Ron Santo, who I loved dearly, was a huge part of my childhood, but there was no part of like intelligent analysis that he was providing. Yeah. He was there to like be a Cubs fan in the booth and like
be a name.
Yeah, and like if you were a Cubs fan and you were listening to it, you felt like somebody that was on your side was like listening to it because he would get so emotionally invested and provide no intelligent analysis. But like the emotional investment was just like it made you want to listen to him because he clearly enjoyed like watching the games, and you could like just tell that from his voice. Whereas John Smoltz, it's like he's at the dentist, like it's like he's doing the worst thing in his life, and he gets paid handsomely to do it. So like,
oh yeah,
what do you think he would get excited about? All right, that's another podcast, but
ooh. We got a new segment. Okay, before this thing goes entirely off the rails, thank you guys for joining us as per usual. Driveline Academy online is something that if you're looking to engage what the Academy does, wherever you are in the world, talk to us. We
follow us on socials.
We can meet you where you are in your season. And again, we're going to roll out a yearly training plan that is going to address all the stuff that you need and the stuff that you want, but it's going to be in consideration of the right way to do it relative to your schedule and your considerations, because
at a lower price point per month than most lessons are.
Yeah. I mean, if you're paying, somebody $75 a week to go do lessons, we're a heck of a lot cheaper than that. So yeah, go check it out. We'll be at you next time to talk about more calling a spring training game and John Smoltz and other baseball players that we want to insult, and then the ones that would hurt our hearts the most.
Yeah.
If they threw it back at us. So catch you guys
My list
later.
of all three of them is just John Smoltz.
It's always John Smoltz. John Smoltz all the time. John Smoltz, everybody. Good night.